Greetings. Welcome to John and Paul's excellent 2024 local ballot adventure. We've been doing this for years, and some people find it useful, and that's awesome. What we do is we quickly go through the ballot issues and try not to really give our opinion on how to vote, and really you need to make up your own opinion on how you're going to vote. Don't listen to anybody else. Don't let somebody else tell you this is how you have to vote. It's your vote. It's, there's democracy demands involvement by the citizens, and the number one and most basic thing you can do to preserve democracy is to vote. And if you want to become involved in ballot issue campaigns or candidate campaigns, that's great. But the most important thing is that you vote. But of course, I'm talking to the choir here because you wouldn't be watching this if you weren't going to go out and vote, or at least were interested. So get your family members, your neighbors, your co-workers, emphasize the importance of voting, and it's super easy. You can do it by mail. You don't have to leave your living room to do it. It's super easy. So there's really no reason not to do it. If you don't vote, you're not participating in your democracy, and you don't really get to have a say anymore, because that is your say, is your vote. Okay. This show, we're going to go over local ballot issues, and in another program on GrassRoots, we'll go over the state ballot issues. GrassRoots also has all kinds of other election information for you to peruse and learn other people's points of view of these, particularly of these ballot issues. Okay, so welcome Paul Menter. He is a carpet-bagging local columnist.
Former local columnist. He's a carpetbagger because he doesn't work really or live in Pitkin County or
I
Aspen.
still work here.
I guess he works out at the ABC. That's true.
Yeah. I don't live in Pitkin County or Aspen anymore, though.
Right,
so.
right. But he was a long time local, and was deeply involved in the city of Aspen government for quite a while. Okay, so Paul, let's start with the county ballot issues. And we're going to start with 1A. It says Pitkin County ballot issue 1A. And let's see, we have issues and questions. You want to go over the difference between an issue and a question?
Sure. I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
So
we're going to start with ballot issue 1A, affordable and workforce housing mill levy. But what's the difference between an issue and a question?
I don't know.
Oh.
Can you tell me that?
Oh, I don't. It's funny. We're winging this, folks.
Oh, I thought you wanted me to set you up.
No, you weren't setting me. Yeah, you did set me up. That was nice. We set each other up. I think an issue is presented by the legislature.
Presented by the county commission, yeah. And then a question is presented by petition, right? By the citizens, I believe.
However, the county ballot question 1C has been presented by the Pitkin County Commissioners, and ballot question 200 is a citizen.
Those are both questions.
Those are both questions. They're citizen-initiated.
I think we're diving into semantics way before we need it.
We need the county clerk here to describe that for us.
Yeah.
The ballot issue 1A is fairly long, but it involves a new mill levy, which county property owners will pay to help with the county has never really been involved in affordable housing.
Well, the city
on the fringes, but
But really, the city of Aspen has been the leader.
The city of Aspen has always kind of controlled the checkbook because they've got the largest source of funding, which is the housing real estate transfer tax, which we're going to talk about later when we get to the city, because they're asking to renew that tax even though it's not about to expire, which is an interesting story. But so what the county is trying to do, and the city has asked them for the last couple of years to do this, and they're finally acceding to the city's request by putting a tax measure on the ballot so that the county can be a funding partner for affordable housing projects going forward. Is kind of the way I read it. So, yeah.
How much is this going to cost me as a property owner?
So it's 1.5 mils, and without getting into too much detail, if you look at just county property taxes, and you compare 1.5 mil property tax levy to the county-only property tax levy from this year, the 2023 tax levy collected in 2024. So what the county's going to do now, which all jurisdictions do, is they go and the assessors present the information for the revaluation. They go through their calculations of what that translates into in terms of the new mill levy, based upon the assessed value of the property and the amount of money they're allowed to collect under the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, the limitations provided by the state, and then they arrive at a new mill levy. We don't know what that is yet. So in order to kind of estimate how much
You
of
mean
an
the
increase
total
it is,
county mill levy?
the total county mill levy.
We don't know what that is yet.
We don't know what that is, and we don't know what the county-only mill levy is either for next year. So, but last year, that county mill levy was 6.376 mils for just the county's general government mill levy. So 1.5 mil levy is a 23.5% increase on that levy, and it would, in theory, take that levy to 7.876 mils, assuming the mill rate for 24 going into 25 was the same as last year, which it won't be. Property taxes in Colorado are insanely complicated to calculate and understand, which is why nobody ever tries. And so we'll try and keep this short and as simple as possible. Basically what it means is that for every $100,000 in taxable value on your property, and there's a whole calculation, it's not the market value of your property, it's the taxable value based on the Tabor calculation that you have to do. What that is,
it's considerably less than the market value.
It's considerably less than the market value. It's about 8%, I think, of the market value. So for every $100,000 of taxable value, a mill levy of 1.5 mils equates to $150 in property taxes. So, for example, a homeowner of a home with a taxable value of $100,000 this year paid the county $637.60, which is, $100,000 times the current mill levy of 6.376 mils. So they would have paid $787.60 if this had been in effect this year, a 23.5% increase.
Okay. Very good. That was pretty succinct.
Okay.
So the whole idea is it enables the county to partner on housing programs with nonprofits, governmental entities such as the City of Aspen, local businesses, housing trusts, private organizations, anybody who is attempting to create affordable housing. This enables the county to partner with them.
Right. It gives them a lot more money. Previously, the county's primary funding source for affordable housing was an impact fee, which I believe still exists. So the county charges an affordable housing impact fee on residential housing development in the county, and that generates a certain amount of money that then can be used for affordable housing, but it's not a consistent annual amount of money that comes from a tax levy. A tax levy like this can be used to support debt issuance. It can be used to plan multi-year programs. None of that can be done with an impact fee.
Because that fluctuates so much.
Because that fluctuates so much.
On how many homes are being built.
Right, which can vary greatly from one year to the next.
And it's a fairly small amount of money in Pitkin County because there aren't a whole lot of houses being
No,
that can
not
be
a whole
can
lot
be
of
built
that can
in,
be built anymore in the
Pitkin-
county. Yes, that's
in
correct.
Pitkin County. Okay.
So that's the deal there. The other thing I would say about this, John, in terms of what I kind of wrote down was, in terms of the impact, people need to understand, in terms of the impact on your overall tax bill, you're going to have to look at your individual tax bill to really understand that, because obviously Pitkin County is just one component. There are over 30 taxing districts on most individual tax bills in Pitkin County and in any county. And so this is
Those are school.
yeah, school, ambulance district, city,
Fire.
all, you know, the historical society has a mill levy. So all those overlapping districts are part of your overall tax bill. So while this is a 23.5% increase in county taxes, it's a far smaller percent increase against your total tax bill. So that's important to understand. It's not a 23% increase in your total property tax. That's just an increase in the county tax. That's the one that I used because it was readily available from the certification of the county, and the county is the agency that's bringing this forward, just so people understand that. And then I think it's also important to indicate that this is not a tax that is intended to fund a specific, already established project. This is for a program. So they're developing a program. It doesn't look to me like that program is fully formed, but it's kind of mutually understood between the city and the county and the other jurisdictions that affordable housing is an ongoing need, and the county has acceded to the idea that it should propose an annual tax-based funding source so that it can be part of that solution. And that's what's happening. So if you believe, as a voter, that there isn't enough tax money available to fund affordable housing development in Pitkin County, then you would want to vote yes. If you believe there's enough already, then you would want to vote no.
The other aspects of this, or the focus of how they're going to spend this money, is the idea is attracting and retaining essential workers for critical county services, such as emergency response, transit, road, bridge, healthcare, everything the county does for us. And it also to reduce homelessness impacts on public agencies by developing transitional housing, supportive housing, and housing stability services, and prioritizing the housing that they will partner with in areas consistent with existing employment services facilities to protect rural character. So this is not to build housing out in the rural county where there isn't any employment.
Not going to be an affordable housing project in Thomasville, probably.
Right. But closer to where the workers, where employment is, which means Aspen, as far as Pitkin County goes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Good luck with that one.
Yep.
Ballot issue 1B, County Solid Waste Center bonds. This is interesting because this is without an increase in county tax. It's to increase the debt. It's a bond. You know, the landfill is full, basically, and this has been a crisis on the horizon for a long time, and it's been projected. It's easy to project how full, how much you put in the landfill, and what the annual use of that landfill is, and it's like 3 years or 5 years or something, and the county's done a really good job of decreasing the annual amount that's going into the landfill with all kinds of different programs. But this is actually, somehow they're going to increase the capacity of the landfill.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to increase the capacity of that canyon, but
that's not clear to me either, but the landfill is what's referred to in government accounting as an enterprise fund of the county government. So it receives its money from fees for service, typically referred to as tip fees in the solid waste industry. So you go to your garbage truck goes to landfill, you do a cleanup at your house, you go to the landfill and they weigh your vehicle and they tell you how much, before you dump your load, and then they weigh it after and they figure out the difference and they base your fee on the weight of what you dispose of at the landfill. Those are tip fees. Tip fees in 2023 totaled $8.6 million at the landfill. Those were about 88% of the annual revenues of that fund. They also have a few other miscellaneous revenues, and then they receive some interest income off of fund balances that the solid waste fund has as well, of a couple $100,000. So at the end of 2023, the landfill solid waste fund had a fund balance of $20.8 million, or equal to about 3 years of their annual operating expenses. They spend about $6.4 million. So it's a legitimate enterprise fund. They are able to generate higher income than they have in expenses. You want to, it's like running a business. You want to have your pricing at a level that's not exorbitant, but covers all of your operating and your capital costs. And that's clearly what the county has calibrated and they're doing here. And this bond issue is intended to borrow money through an enterprise fund, so no tax increase, still required to get voter approval under the state constitution for an increase in debt, even though they're not increasing taxes.
So they have to pay the bond back by their revenue.
By their revenue, and they'll use tip fees to do that. What's not clear in here, which I think would be helpful in the information that I saw the county, is if they intend to increase tip fees in order to help pay for that bond issue. There's no indication that they're going to, but that's a possibility because that's their primary source of income. And if they're not going to raise taxes, that's their only source of funding. And that's the sorts of funding I would expect them to use. So if you go up to the landfill, and I've been up to the landfill a couple times this year, it's a really good operation, and and it is full, and they're running out of room. So I'm sure there are necessary improvements. But if you didn't think you had enough information, or you weren't sure about if the cost of the increase was the best way to solve the county's solid waste problem, you might vote no on this. If you thought that expanding the landfill and doing infrastructure improvements up there and keeping all the landfill operations in that location was the best way to solve the problem, you would want to vote yes on this.
Okay, now wait a minute. You used the Pitkin County landfill?
For work.
Oh, for work.
Yeah. Yeah,
These non-residents can't use.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm not. My business is a resident. My business is a resident
high society
of Pitkin County, and we've used the landfill a couple times this year. Yep.
Okay. Good. Pitkin.
So that's what I've got.
You got more? Oh,
Yeah. No, that's I believe that it's important. I believe governments, and I'm a recovering government finance director, should provide physical impact statements to their voters when they ask them for increases in debt or increases in taxes. And in fact, Tabor, the taxpayers' bill of rights, requires that. But I could not find a fiscal impact statement for this measure or the measures that the city is putting forward. So unless they consider their ballot measure their fiscal impact statement, which they might. So I think they could do a better job of explaining to citizens how much money it's going to take, where that money is going to come from, how much the annual debt service is, those kinds of things.
Okay, that's fair.
Yep.
Pitkin County ballot question 1C. BOCC referred Home Rule Charter Amendment. Now, 1C, these next two, 1C and 200, are about the airport. And if you want to know more about this, GrassRoots has, if you watch GrassRoots, you can't avoid all our airport programs from both, the ACRA did 9 programs on it, and we also have, we did 3 long format programs with Amory Lovins and Aspen Flywright for their point of view of what we should do with the airport. And
So there's a lot of information just on GrassRoots, and you don't have to watch TV. You can access this through our YouTube channel, through our website. Go to our website. It's easy to get to our YouTube channel there. It's easy to find those on our website. We also have Android and iOS apps that you can go to your app store and download those, and all that information is on those apps. Now, question 1C isn't really about the airport. It's actually about the home rule charter. My brief understanding of the home rule charter is that decades ago, Pitkin County was the first county, and maybe still, maybe there's a couple other counties maybe in Colorado that have home rule charters. And it basically, the county takes over a lot of the power of the state.
They're not obligated to follow statutory guidance on all items. You have to follow the state constitution if you have a home rule charter, but you have the autonomy under the state constitution to have a home rule charter as a county or a city. City of Aspen is a home rule city as well, to establish laws that vary from what the state statutes would require for a statutory city. Yes.
In the same way that the states have their own constitution that is subservient to the United States Constitution, they can't go against the United States Constitution,
right,
but they can create, I guess, laws within the Constitution that vary with the federal government's statutes.
Right, and a relatively recent example of that at the state level was marijuana legalization when that happened, and marijuana remained and remains illegal nationally. You know, it's a controlled substance and it's felony possession at certain levels and all that. And in Colorado, it's not, and in many other states now as well.
Right,
so
great example.
That's an example at the state level.
So the county can do the same thing, or the city can do the same thing, versus the state statutes.
Yep.
Okay, so this one is about, does the county have control over the redevelopment of their airport?
Right.
Is that
basically, yes.
as opposed to the state, or for that matter, the federal government having control over it? That's 1C. The citizen-initiated question 200 is also a home rule charter amendment, giving the citizens the power,
A vote, essentially,
over everything that happens at the airport.
Not everything, but everything over a certain threshold, right? So,
Okay.
yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
Over a certain threshold.
I think,
Beyond the runway dimensions and locations that existed in January 2024, unless Pitkin County voters approve such expansion or relocation. So this is purely about the runway.
yeah.
The expansion or relocation of the runway. Do the voters get to decide if the runway is extended or widened?
Right, and of course, that's the cusp of the disagreement between the citizens groups and the county and the FAA as the overarching regulatory and funding agency at the federal level for airport improvements, right? Is how far apart is the safety issue is really what it is, of how far the runway needs to be separated from the taxiway, and what that means in terms of what airplanes can land and use.
And how wide the runway is and the taxiway is.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot of information about that, and all the arguments on either side on GrassRoots. So tune into those. Okay?
Yep.
Now we're going to move on to the municipal ballot issues, measures for Aspen and the town of Snowmass Village. If you're watching outside of Pitkin County, sorry, we're not covering that stuff because we'd be here for the rest of the till Election Day. So we're going to focus on Aspen and Town of Snowmass Village. City of Aspen ballot issue 2A is the extension of the real estate transfer tax. And that transfer tax, the one they're talking about, is the one that funds housing. Deed restricted affordable housing. And it's scheduled to expire in 2040, and this will extend it to 2060.
Yes.
So why do you think they're doing it now?
They're doing it now because they know that in order to have any chance to be able to have enough funding to complete the lumberyard project, which was in the paper this morning, because phase 0, they haven't turned a spade of dirt on the project yet, but phase 0 just tripled in cost. So the initial infrastructure cost, the staff presented to the council in a budget work session that cost that they originally estimated at $14 million is now $45 million. The total cost of the project is between $400 and $700 some million, depending on how much it costs, I guess. So that is the way that the article explains it. So this measure is to extend the real estate transfer tax for housing, which is the single largest source of revenue that the city gets for affordable housing, for a period long enough to be dedicated to a long-term bond issue, to like a 30-year bond issue that could finance the cost of those improvements, which are going to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And so they needed to, even though it's not expiring anytime soon, they needed to be able to show to bond investors that they're going to be able to collect that money for the length of the debt service of a future bond issue. So that's the primary reason for that.
All right. The next one is the City of Aspen ballot issue 2B is the extension of the 0.45% sales tax for affordable housing and daycare. So this is not an increase. It's neither of these are increases. They're just extending the life of these taxes.
Right.
And again, under Tabor, they have to ask the voters permission.
They have to ask the voters for permission to extend both these taxes. It's another thing that's important to mention with the RET before we move to the sales taxes, that real estate transfer taxes were banned in the state of Colorado when the Tabor Amendment was adopted in the early 1990s. And so the city of Aspen's RET is grandfathered. So
there's no new RET taxes.
No new RET taxes. The RET tax can't be increased. It can be extended.
Because Tabor is in the state constitution.
Tabor's in the state constitution. So even though the city of Aspen has a home rule charter, it has to follow the Constitution. And the Constitution doesn't permit new real estate transfer taxes. So that's another important element.
And if it dies, then you can't get another
If it dies,
one.
you can't get it back. So, you know, a no vote on the real estate transfer tax would not mean that the city would stop collecting real estate transfer tax, because they still have authority to collect it until 2060. So
2040.
Or excuse me, 2040. This would extend it to 2060. And so, you know, if you wanted to, I mean, it's a very important tax. The housing program can't function without it. And the city is committed to this program. It houses the majority of working people who live in Aspen now. So not continuing the tax is really not a functional option. But so I'm trying to think of, okay, why would somebody want to vote against it versus why would somebody want to vote for it? Well, the reason to vote for it is because you need the tax, you know, for the program. Whether you believe in the lumberyard or you don't believe in the lumberyard, you need the RET. Whether you think a lumberyard ought to be built or not, my opinion on that, my personal opinion on that is a matter of public record. Anybody can see that. You know, I don't need to talk about it right here. But if you decided,
Hasn't that ship sailed?
Well, that's another question. But I mean, like, you know, initial lumberyard this is today's paper, right? Initial lumberyard project costs triple. So what happened is, I'm going to just riff for just a second. What happened is that the city of Aspen approved the lumberyard project knowing that it cost more than they could afford with current revenue sources. The city council approved that project knowing they didn't have the money to pay for the whole thing. And that's backwards, right? I mean, if you go to government school, like I did, and learn about government finance, the rule is, it's more like a guideline. It's like a pirate code thing, right? It's not really a rule anymore. It's kind of a guideline. You ask the voters, you say, okay, I want to build this project. It's going to cost $500 million. In order to fund it, I need to extend and increase taxes this much. Will you approve these taxes? If you approve these taxes, we'll greenlight this project. The city did it the opposite way. They approved the lumberyard project, and now they're asking the voters to extend the taxes, the RET tax and that sales tax, in order to extend the life to finance the project. So in my opinion, that's backwards. So the one reason to potentially not vote for the RET would be as a protest vote against that, because it gives all the appearances that the city is maybe not managing this project as effectively or clearly as one would hope. If the infrastructure costs triple in 2 years before you even turn a spade of dirt on the construction site, that's not a good sign for project management. So that would be the one reason. But I would not. I'm not trying to, you know, to state a position here. And this is a very important tax, and it needs to continue for the whole program, not just for the lumberyard.
Okay.
So that's what I would. Now I'll get off my soapbox and stop that riff.
But it's okay. This is your home for free speech. Everyone's home for free speech here at GrassRoots. You can come in and you know, express your opinion, and I think this is a knowledgeable opinion.
And I wanted to also, if I could, just provide a few facts about the housing fund, just so voters are informed about the housing fund. So
these are facts.
These are facts. So the city's affordable housing special revenue fund, into which these tax dollars, the RET dollars, are deposited, ended 2023 with a fund balance of $78.4 million. So they've got a little bit of money in the fund. They've generated an average of about $17-18 million a year in RET over the last 3 or 4 years. That amount is gradually declining as the surge from the COVID years is declining, but it's a significant amount of funding that they get. Before COVID, they were generating less than $10 million a year in RET, so COVID had a big impact. The housing funds are primarily used for development of affordable housing. And the city is, of course, building a fund balance. That's what that $8 million is for, to help pay for this lumberyard project. So they're trying to put money away as well as have a source of financing. You know, I mentioned the city's grandfathered into the RET program at the state level, and the total amount of collections over the last few years, specifically. The peak was 2021, when the city collected $20.9 million. In 2022, that number was $17.1 million. In 2023, it was $15.1 million. So it's gradually kind of coming down.
Back to sort of maybe that 10 million level.
Well, and it's pacing this year. If you just compare year to date from last year, it's pacing to generate about the same amount of money as last year. So maybe it might be leveling off at this point. Although the tax can be very volatile because it's based on purchases of real estate. And if the market is good, people buy. If it's not good, they don't. And so the amount of collections on an annual basis can vary greatly. So that's an important thing to remember.
And while interest rates have some influence, people aren't getting mortgages on $20 million homes.
No, typically those aren't homes that get mortgages. Those are homes where people pay cash, right? Because those are buyers that are billionaires that have the money to, and they're parking money in it. They're making an investment in what they see as a stable asset that's going to hold and appreciate in value, which they see Aspen real estate doing. Which is why it's so important to have physical infrastructure and workers and housing for those workers to support the community so that that continues, so that people who have those means continue to believe that.
And
right?
that's also the reason for the RET, is that those big homes need people to maintain them,
Right. Yep.
and that creates a housing need.
Yep, it does. And to your point about prior RET collections, in the 10 years of 2010 to 2019 before COVID, housing RET collections averaged $7.6 million a year. So about half of what the current year collections are. And of course, with inflation and cost of and housing appreciation, property appreciation, you would expect that average to go up. So the question is where is it going to find its new level? Is it going to find it back under 10 million, over 10 million? Where is it going to be? And we have to wait to see. We don't know. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's it on the. That's it.
Okay,
on the,
good
on the
discussion.
On the sales tax. So this is a 0.45 sales tax. It's a 0.45% sales tax. The 0.45% sales tax is split. 55% goes of the 45% goes to daycare, goes to the Kids First Fund, and 45% of the 0.45% sales tax goes to the housing fund. So the city is proposing to extend this tax along with the RET in tandem to the same expiration date, because it would intend, and I'm sure it intends to use both of them, to support a bond issue for housing in the future. Or if it does intend to do that at some point, that it can do it. It can do that because of that. So that makes a lot of sense to have those taxes be extended the same. In 2023, this tax generated just over $3 million. So about 1.4 million for housing and about 1.7 million for the daycare. And that amount was down 44% from 2022 when it generated about 5.5 million. We remember the surge that happened and kind of the return back to prior COVID levels.
So, but the sales tax based on everything that is sold. Does that include
anything at retail that's sold?
Retail.
Yeah, retail sales. Any
retail
retail
sales were down during COVID.
No,
No?
not in Aspen.
People were escaping COVID to come here. Okay, yeah.
But the important thing about this tax is it's not just housing. It's a relatively small source of funding for housing. It's the most important funding source for the Kids First Fund. So it generates 85% of their funds. And Kids First, of course, is the housing and daycare service that the city of Aspen provides, which provides scholarships and grants to providers and to parents and families to help daycare be more affordable in Aspen. It's been around for a very long time. It's a very important service. Full disclosure, I'm on a similar board in Glenwood Springs called the Early Childhood Network. It provides similar services. We're not government supported like Kids First is, but similar. The Kids First Fund ended 2023 with a fund balance of just over $9.5 million, which is about 3 times their annual operating budget of $3.1 million. So they've got money in the bank. There's been talk of using that money to build facilities for daycare. And so that money isn't just parked and waiting for operations. The city's looking at options to try and use that money for those purposes.
And right now they just have the yellow brick. Is that right?
Right now the yellow brick is the primary facility for the city. Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. And again, the Kids First budget is about $3.1 million a year. And if you look at this as part of the overall City of Aspen sales tax, the City of Aspen charges a 2.4% sales tax. So when you get your sales tax bill and you see total tax, which is a little over 9%, I think it's 9.3% in Aspen, the city's portion of that is 2.4%. 1.5% goes to parks. 0.45% goes to housing and daycare, as we just described. There's a 0.3% public education tax, which sunsets in 2026, and a 0.15% transportation sales tax, which has no sunset. That's the total City of Aspen sales tax that this is part of that will continue. So, little additional
Wow, a
information.
lot more information than I thought I was going to get.
Yeah, so a little more
those-
information on what that, on where those, where that money goes and what it's used for.
Okay, so those were issues 2A and 2B we just discussed.
Yep.
City of Aspen ballot issue 2C, imposition of a use tax on motor vehicles. This is not a new tax.
Well, it is a new tax, but it's replacing a tax. They're removing a tax at the same time.
Okay, without imposing any new tax.
Well, they are actually, technically.
Okay, but taxes aren't going to go up.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. And I'll tell you why.
This is for roads and bridges and other transit-related infrastructure.
Right. So currently the city of Aspen includes in its 2.4% sales tax the authorization for the city to collect sales tax on automotive sales that occur within the city of Aspen. So how many auto dealerships are there in Aspen?
One?
None.
None.
Currently I don't think there are any. So
There's no dealership out at the ABC. Is that in the city of Aspen? No.
No,
it's
and there
in
was a
Pitkin County.
dealership, but it's not there anymore.
Okay.
So currently, nobody who lives in the city of Aspen and purchases a vehicle pays a sales tax to the city of Aspen of 2.4%. So the way, and motor vehicle sales taxes are slightly different than other sales taxes. So if you live in Aspen and you buy your vehicle at Berthoud, let's just say, in Glenwood Springs, which is in Garfield County, you are actually exempt from paying local sales tax on that purchase. So the only sales tax you pay is you pay a 2.9% sales tax to the state, which is the state sales tax. You don't pay county sales tax, you don't pay local sales tax. Because Aspen currently does not have a use tax, you don't pay a local tax. So while they are in fact eliminating the right to collect a sales tax, it's a tax that they get very little revenue from. The only time they would get revenue from a sales tax in Aspen is if you and I both lived in Aspen and I had a 2004 Honda Pilot and you bought it from me for $1,000, I would be supposed to collect $24 from you and give it to them, right? That's not what this is.
Right.
So, and I looked this up, and I would encourage voters to go to the State Department of Revenue website and get this. I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but this little flyer from the state, Sales and Use Tax Topics Motor Vehicles, which describes the application of sales and use taxes to motor vehicles. So the important thing to remember here is that sales and use taxes are intended to be complementary. And they're based upon what's referred to as nexus, which is a fancy word for location. A sales tax is applied based on the location of the sale. A use tax is applied based on the location of the use of a vehicle, of an item. Okay? So if you live in Aspen, you're using your vehicle in Aspen, even though you didn't buy it here. And so a use tax enables, when you go to register your vehicle for the first time, in Aspen, you will be charged a 2.1% use tax on that vehicle. That didn't exist before, and that is a new tax. And
You actually go to Pitkin County to pay your.
right, but because the county administers that, but like they do, the county administers registrations like they do in every county, but the county is obligated to look and see where you live, and if you live within one of the cities in the county, and they have a use tax on vehicles, and you're registering that vehicle, it's a new vehicle, you're registering for the first time, they're obligated to collect and remit a use tax from you to the city of Aspen on that registration. So that is in fact new. And as a new tax under the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, again, this should have triggered the city to provide a fiscal impact analysis of how much money they expected to receive from this, and also how much money they expected to be giving back by eliminating the sales tax on vehicles, but I didn't see that. If it's there, I apologize, but I didn't see a fiscal impact analysis on that. So, that's one that voters might want to think about, because it's been presented by the city as a ministerial change that really is, and because the use tax rate is 2.1% and the sales tax rate was 2.4%, it gives this visual impression that it's a tax reduction. I don't really believe it is a tax reduction. So I think that it's the city implementing a use tax on motor vehicles so that they can create a new revenue source.
For general fund?
I believe that it goes to transportation.
It says
right?
it's supposed to, it's supposed to go to roads and bridges.
Right, so we go to roads and bridges. So maybe they could use it to fix the Castle Creek Bridge.
But that's a state highway.
I know. So maybe, is the state going to pay for that, or are they just going to load restrict it when we get the inspection results back? Which has happened to another state highway bridge. We should remember Highway 50. That bridge is still load restricted. So imagine that happening at Aspen, a load restricted bridge coming in and out of Aspen for months. That would be a really, really bad situation.
For months until it got upgraded.
Because it's still not fixed. The Highway 50 bridge outside of Gunnison, which was load restricted by the state when it failed its inspection earlier this year. So, I just diverted us.
Okay,
So,
we did.
But in terms of this tax, I would just encourage voters to do your research, understand what this is about, because I don't believe that this is a kind of a net kind of ministerial change where we're reducing one tax and we're increasing another one just to be in compliance with kind of a state desired approach to taxation of motor vehicles. That's not the whole story here, I don't believe. So I just think it's important for people to understand those things.
No, that's great. That's great, Paul.
Yeah.
This is why you're here, because I sure as heck don't know anything. Anything like that. And I bet neither does the audience.
So when you look at this thing, it provides examples. So on the second page of this state flyer, and which camera we were looking at? Are we looking at this one?
Number 2.
So number 2. So I know on the second page of this, it provides 3 examples. I know you can't read this, but one of the examples it provides is you live in a city and county, and then you purchase a vehicle in a different city and county. All you pay is Colorado sales tax when you purchase it, and then the only local tax you would have to pay would be the local use tax. So right now, there is no local use tax in Aspen. So if you buy a vehicle in Garfield County, there's no use tax to be applied to you in the city of Aspen. This would change that. This would add a use tax that would be applied. So it would be a tax increase on you as a buyer that you would not have had to pay prior to its implementation.
Okay. And indeed, that's why there's a ballot issue about it, because
That's why there's a ballot issue about it, because it's a Tabor issue. Yep.
City of Aspen ballot issue 2. Sorry, we just did that one.
2C.
We did 2C.
We did.
We're done with the City of Aspen. Town of Snowmass Village ballot question 2D. Approve workforce housing project spending limit. This is not increased taxes, but we've learned it. I'll let Paul decide if it's increasing taxes or not. Are we authorizing the town of Snowmass Village? Is it just you, town of Snowmass Village residents, be authorized to take actions necessary to construct a new workforce housing project consisting up to 79 units, 118 bedrooms. It'll be up the draw above Town Hall, up there. It seems like decent place to be, nice view up there. Good view of Base Village. At an estimated project cost of $86 million to be paid for with tourism tax revenues. So they're taking money out of they're designating money from the tourism tax to pay for employee housing.
That's what it appears. It appears like they're using existing tax sources to build affordable housing on property owned by the city. That's what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
By the town, pardon me. Yes, by the town of Snowmass Village. And so the only thing I would encourage voters in Snowmass Village to do is just get details on the project. You know, what exactly is being built, what are the details of the project development, who's it going to house, and what specifically are the sources of funding. And the only reason I would think of, I mean, if you don't support the specifics of that project, that would be a reason to not vote for it. If you do, then you would want to support it, because it's not going to cost you any more, doesn't sound like.
Okay, that was, you know, local issues tend to be this way. They're financial issues, and they directly, you know, of anything you vote on, these are the things that most directly affect you. And so it's good to do the research on it. And thank you, Paul, for all your knowledgeable
You're welcome.
research on
Always
these
fun.
programs. And so,
Always an
wasn't
adventure.
That fun?
Always
that was a fun adventure.
Always an excellent adventure. Talk about local ballot measures.
And so that's the end of this program, and we're going to do another program about the state ballot issues, which are, you know, twice as many.
We might change places, or maybe we won't. I don't know.
Okay. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned to GrassRoots, and make sure you vote.
Make sure you vote.